Hi, I'm Hopkinton Tech Librarian Danielle, and I'm joined by our teen librarian Anne for Teen Lit Bits, a short show where we'll feature old and new teen books that are perfect for binging.
Each of our 6 sessions will discuss one topic in YA Lit and should be about 20 to 30 minutes long. This session, we're talking about some upcoming new releases to watch out for in the world of teen lit. Just a note before we dive in that some of the release dates may have changed at this point. I was looking at what I thought would be May, June release dates, but because of the virus, some things are getting pushed back. So just keep that in mind. These are dates that I know of right now, but things could change in the future. There are also lots of new releases, so I'm really only going to mention and highlight a few. All right, if everybody's ready, let's dive in.
All right,
Okay.
so it looks like you got started with March.
Yes, I did, Danielle. Just in case there were some things that people may have missed in March. Actually, I have one of the books here with me. So one of the books, and I mentioned this on the Hop News Hop Hour there that I was on as a guest also. But this is called Black Brother, Black Brother. And this is about two siblings who are actually of mixed race. Their dad is Norwegian and white. Mom is African American descent. And so the boys, mixed race, but one presents darker than the other. And so this is actually about their different experiences, being brothers, but experiencing prejudice and racism differently. And it was also really interesting because it took into account a sport that not many people know about or read about, fencing. One of the brothers decides to become a fencing expert so he can basically beat somebody at school who's kind of a racist bully. So this was really good. I would recommend this one. There was another one called Bloom by Kenneth Oppel. Some of you may know him from, he's had a number of series, one that dealt with a young Frankenstein, another that dealt with an airship, kind of steampunk. He had a new one called Bloom, and this one actually is kind of timely. It deals with toxic plants that begin to take over the world when it starts to rain. And there are 3 teenagers who seem immune who are on an island. So they basically have to figure out why they're immune and how they can help to save the rest of the world from these toxic plants. And that's the first in a series, so that should be good. For those of you huge Cassandra Clare fans who may have missed, Chain of Gold came out in March. Although probably most of you who know Cassandra Clare have already purchased a copy for yourself. And of course, this one is a big fat one, just like her other ones. But this introduces somebody called Cordelia Carstairs, and she becomes involved with some of the shadow hunters that we've already met and known. So that's going to be a new, I think, trilogy also. Then another one I wanted to highlight is The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. Some of you might know Marie Lu. She's really great. She's got a couple dystopian series, the Legend series and the Warcross series. This one is really a departure for her. This one talks about Wolfgang Mozart and his sister, who was apparently another really accomplished musician, but because she was growing up in a time when women got married and had kids and didn't go to play music. So they sort of created this fantasy world. And so this is about the brother and sister and the fantasy world that they created, which I believe was called The Kingdom of Back. So thus the title.
So, Anne, there are
Yes.
actually a couple really interesting books about Mozart's sister. And I know that there's one specifically for adults if you're interested in crossover lit or in reading something for teens and then also something for adults. And this one is called, actually the title is Mozart's Sister. And I believe it is by Rita Charbonnier. And so that one is a little bit more of an adult look at the same woman's life.
Excellent. And so her name apparently was Hannah Roll, I believe. And I didn't even know, sadly. And look, the book you just mentioned doesn't even use her name. It's called Mozart's Sister.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's the ghost to show. I didn't even know Mozart had a talented musical sister, and here we go. Such is women's life.
Indeed. This is actually a really good time, though, if I can take a little segue here. A really good time for women who have been kind of pushed out of the limelight. We're seeing a lot of books. I know definitely in the adult fiction, and then I think also in young adult fiction that are about historical women who actually existed, who are having their stories told now through historical fiction perspectives or through fictionalized stories.
Absolutely. In fact, one really good one that I'll recommend, it's not new, but I'll just recommend it, is called Blood, Water, Paint. And it was about a very, actually kind of well-known painter at the time. But it's told in verse form, really good, and about her struggles to become famous in her own right without having to tutor under male painters and just basically copy what they did, and her struggles with being a female in what was traditionally a male world. So I'll just throw it out there. So
it's funny that you mentioned that book because I actually read an adult novel about the same person. It's called, I believe, The Passions of Artemisia.
Yes.
And it was really good. I really enjoyed it. And if you have a chance to go look at some of her work and compare it to some of the work of some of the men who were painting at the same time as her, it's really interesting to see the female perspective that she brings to her artwork.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Yeah, that was a really interesting. And again, it's so good that these books are coming out because otherwise, how would we learn about these women and what they went through? So absolutely right. Good point, Danielle. Thank you.
All right, so back to your list.
Okay. Well, another one I want to mention, and I actually happen to have a copy of the book with me at home. This is on my to-read list. Is called Stamped, and it's by one of my all-time favorite young adult authors, Jason Reynolds. There he is. And this one is actually an adaptation of an adult book. So this is nonfiction, and it discusses racism and anti-racism in America, how racism came to be, sort of the history chronologically about this. Although he stresses that it's not a dry history book. And if you know anything about Jason Reynolds, I don't think it's possible for him to write anything dry in his life. So this is getting really good reviews, and I'm really excited to read this.
Now I see Ibram X. Kendi's name on there. Is that the adult adaptation or the YA adaptation of Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist?
Exactly. It is exactly that, Danielle. Mm-hmm.
That was a fantastic book, and I imagine that Jason Reynolds has just taken that and made it even better.
And it was interesting because they approached him about it, and Jason was like, I can't just rewrite your words. I have to basically write the book myself. And if you know Jason, he's going to take that and run with it, and it's going to be amazing. So I'm really excited to read this.
Okay.
Another one that came out in March that I'll mention, this is the last one I'm going to mention from March, is called Dragon Hoops. And this is actually a graphic novel by Gene Yang, and he was the one who wrote American Born Chinese several years ago. And this apparently builds on a lot of Gene's own history of his life when he was young, how he couldn't play sports at all, poor Gene. But how as an adult, he became a teacher and got actually very involved with the basketball team at the high school where he was working. And the high school team turned out to be a pretty championship team. So I'm really excited to read this too, because Gene, he's amazing, and his graphic novels have been really good. So if you're into graphic novels, I would highly recommend looking for that one. So that one was called Dragon Hoops.
Fantastic.
Yes. All right. Let me jump into sort of late March and April. Ray Carson has a new book coming out. You may know her because she wrote the trilogy Girl of Fire and Thorns. So she's got a new one called The Empire of Dreams. And this one actually takes place in the same world as Girl of Fire and Thorns, but this is a standalone novel, a new character. And this is about a strong female heroine. She has to survive recruitment in the Royal Guard. And no female has ever survived a year in the Royal Guard. But I have a feeling she's going to be able to do it. And she is going to be needed to help basically save the empire from what it's going through at that point. So if you loved, I loved Girl of Fire and Thorns. So Empire of Dreams by Ray Carson. Then another, oh, you guys get really excited. Alex Rider has a new, the 12th book in the Alex Rider series is coming out by Anthony Horowitz called Nightshade. And this actually introduces a new criminal element called Nightshade. So our hero heads to Gibraltar and parts of Europe to try and fight this new criminal organization. And Alex Rider, very popular series. I know a lot of people are going to be looking forward to this one. So that one's called Nightshade. Then Monica Hess has a new book coming out, and she writes really good historical fiction. And she has a new one coming out called They Went Left. And this is about a family. And the reason it's called They Went Left, sadly, is because this girl and her brother, as they were being divided up in a concentration camp, she went one way with her brother. The rest of her family went left and unfortunately were killed in the concentration camp. But she manages to survive World War II, and she gets separated from this brother who also survived. So this is actually sort of a part mystery also, while she searches for her brother throughout Europe. So that's called They Went Left. And then another nonfiction I'll point out is called Kent State by Deborah Wiles. She's a really good nonfiction writer. And this is about, for any of you who are too young to know about this, in 1970, while students were protesting the Vietnam War at Kent State in Ohio, they were fired upon and 4 died. They were fired upon by American troops. So this was kind of a turning point for protesting against the Vietnam War. And there's a very famous song called 4 Dead in Ohio about Kent State. I don't know if it's called that, actually. Danielle, do you know if it's called that?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but that's the line that most people know.
Exactly. That is a recurring chorus there. So that was really a pivotal moment in United States history. So that one's going to be good if you're interested in nonfiction.
Yep. And if you're missing your history glasses right now.
Which some of you may be, who knows? Okay, let's go on to May and June. All right, I think this is probably the biggest, well, one of the biggest new releases that's going to be coming out.
I know it's big in the adult world too. And when you hear about a YA book in the adult world, you know.
This is huge. There's going to be a new book in the Hunger Games series. Now, Suzanne Collins has waited a bit to write this, but this one's called The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And it takes place on the 10th annual Hunger Games. And we have a descendant of our previous President Snow who's involved. And he has to mentor a tribute from District 12, which we all remember is the poorest district. So you can imagine how this descendant of a former president must feel about having to mentor somebody from District 12. But another Hunger Games book. Woo! All right. This one's also going to be big too. This one's called The Betrothed by Kira Cass. And Kira Cass wrote the Selection series, which is very popular. So this is a duology, and it's similar, I think, in some ways to the Selection series. It involves sort of courtly intrigue and romance. There is a lady who is chosen to marry the king, but she has to basically decide if this is what she really wants. So I'm intrigued by that premise. We'll see what happens there. Another one coming out is by Elizabeth Acevedo. She wrote The Poet X, and what was her other one about? When You Call Me or something like that. Really good, excellent books. So this is called Clap When You Land. And this one is about 2 sisters who don't know they exist, half-sisters. Their father's been keeping a secret until dad dies. And so they end up meeting each other after this. And she generally writes really amazing. And she uses Latinx characters. So this, I think, is going to be big too. And then one more I'll talk about in this May and June is called The Enigma Game. And this is by Elizabeth Vine. She is the one who has written Pearl Thief and Codename Verity, very popular World War II book. So this is another World War II book. But this takes place in a small Scotland village. And 3 teens discover an Enigma machine that translates German code. So you can imagine what they're going to try and figure out. How can they determine how to work the machine? Can they translate it in order to help the war effort against the Germans? And she's so good. So this one should be just as good. And then I have one more to mention from this section. If you remember, if you've ever read When We Were Liars by E. Lockhart, which I think is very popular, that was such a good book, psychological thriller kind of thing. She has a new one called Again, Again. And this one sounds a little bit almost fantastical in a way. So I think she's going out of her comfort zone a little bit here. But it asks the question, what if you could fall in love 1,000 times? And I think it might even take place in other universes, other time periods. So I think this is really going to be kind of a unique story. So those are all great authors that I've just mentioned. I can't believe all this good stuff is coming out. Danielle, do you have any comments before I go to my final group here?
No, I think those are all just fine.
All right. So then I looked a little bit into the future and try and find a couple that I could mention from July and onwards. And for those of you who like Jenna Welsh, she has had several travel romance books. She's got another one coming out, Love and Olives. This one sounds kind of like a Mamma Mia for the book crowd. So Liv is asked by her father, who she's been a little bit separated from, to go and help him with his research in Greece. So, of course, she ends up going to a beautiful Greek island to help Dad and have all kinds of experiences there. So that one sounds very, that's kind of like a classy beach read. Then Darius the Great Deserves Better by Adib Khorram. If you read Darius the Great Is Not Okay, you remember he went to visit his relatives in Iran. He learned about himself in the process. This is a follow-up. He comes home. He seems like he's in a better place. He actually has a boyfriend. He's joined a soccer team. He has a job that he likes. But then his grandmothers come to visit and sort of throw a wrench in the whole works. So Darius, as grandmothers do. So Darius begins to wonder, am I really doing okay, or do I deserve better? And if you haven't read Darius the Great Is Not, that was the first one's great, so I recommend reading that. And then this one I'm very excited about. And this woman is a local author, Mackenzie Lee. She lives and works in Cambridge. She's had a series of books about the Montague siblings. She's got a new one out called The Nobleman's Guide to Scandal and Shipwrecks. And this is actually about the youngest Montague sibling, Adrian. And he has to search for his older brother and sister, who he's about, I think, 10 years younger than they are. And he really didn't even know they existed until one of his parents dies. So he sort of goes off on a journey to find them. And if you've read any of these books, you will know that once these siblings get together and have to go on these journeys, oh my goodness, lots of exciting activities will ensue. They will learn about each other. They will learn about themselves. And apparently this one also has something about possibly a hidden treasure or something that will affect the family legacy. So that one's also very exciting to look forward to.
Now, this series is set in the pseudo-Victorian time frame, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yes, all of the manners.
Exactly, all of the manners. First book dealt with a male sibling, Monty, he's called, and poor Monty is bisexual in a time when it's, of course, not accepted. He's also the oldest son, so he's expected to marry, carry on the family by providing heirs. Then the second book is about his younger sister, who also does not want to follow in what is considered a traditional female way of going to finishing school, getting married, having children. She wants to be a doctor, which of course is frowned upon. And they also have sort of a family friend who's lived with them for a long, long time. And he is actually half African American, or African, I guess I should say. His mother was a slave, but he's been sort of raised with the family a little bit, but he's of course not 100% accepted. But he and Monty have a very special relationship also. So yes, so it's kind of set in that Victorian time, but about a lot of people who don't necessarily fit in. And what are they going to do? How are they going to be themselves when society doesn't let them be themselves?
You know,
So
that's a question that so many people are asking themselves.
Sounds like Danielle may have some experience with that.
Well, you know, maybe in my younger days.
Listen, in my younger days, I think I majored in about 12 different things at college before I was able to choose something. So, all right. So that is sort of a quick summary, an introduction to some exciting new YA releases. I hope you have enjoyed our chat, and you'll return for our next YA session where we will discuss some genre mashups. So I'm going to discuss some things that are combined in unusual ways.
You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram on the library social media pages. Be sure to like and follow us to get notifications about all of our Lit Bit videos, as well as lots of other cool stuff that we're doing. And of course, if you want more Lit Bits, you can join our YA Lit Bits Facebook group, where we'll have all of our videos posted, as well as links to our question box, lots of fun polls, and also links to all of the books that we talked about.
Woohoo! All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody, and happy reading.